No one tells you that faithfulness can feel like nothing is working. No one sits you down before you say yes to God and explain that there will be stretches of this journey where you are doing everything right and it will still feel like something is wrong. And the hardest part isn't always the difficulty itself. It's not knowing what to call what you're walking through at the moment. Because when you don't have a name for it, you start giving it the wrong one. See, you can call it failure. You might say that it is delay. You may even call it a sign that maybe you heard from God wrong. But what if it's none of those things? What if what you're actually walking through has a name and that name changes everything about how you carry it? Today, we're going to talk about seasons. Yes, seasons. Not in a surface level type, just trust the process kind of way, but in a way that I hope gives you real language for exactly where you are right now. Hi, welcome. My name is Teresa V. Smithen-Quintana, and if you're new here, this is the Purpose and Calling Show, and this is the space where we have real conversations about what it actually means to walk out a God-given calling. Now, we're not talking about the highlight reel version, but the actual process, the ones that people don't normally talk about, because this journey, it has layers. And the more honest we are about what those layers feel like, the better equipped we are to move through them. Today's teaching is part one of a two-part conversation. We're starting with seasons, what they are, why God uses them specifically, and what they're actually producing in you even when you can't see it. And then in part two, we're going to go much deeper into one specific season, the hidden building season. And I'm going to get a little personal about it in a way that I don't normally go. But today we are going to be building the foundation for that part two. And I don't want you to skip this part because it's very important. Because what I'm about to share is going to reframe not just where you are, but how you see God in the middle of it. All right? Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about what is a season. I want to start with something that sounds simple, but if you think about it, I think a lot of us have never really fully settled into our understanding. A season is not a mistake. It is a detour. It is not evidence that something went wrong. It is not God's way of punishing you or holding out on you. No, a season is a specific period of time with a specific purpose that produces something specific in you. And that next chapter of your journey that it will require. Okay? Ecclesiastes 3:1 says it plainly. This is the NIV version. It says, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. Everything. Did you get that? Everything. Not just the good parts, not just the visible parts, not just the exciting fruit producing parts, not just the parts that make sense to you, but everything. Every activity under the heavens has its own appointed time, which means the season that you're in right now, however it feels, is not outside of God's awareness. It is inside of His design for you and your life. Now, I want you to sit with that for a moment because there is a difference between intellectually agreeing with that statement and actually living from it. See, a lot of us can say God is in control on Sunday, right? And then we spend Monday through Saturday quietly convinced that something has gone wrong. And I say that not to necessarily judge anyone, but I say it because I myself have actually lived through that tension, okay? And I have been building what God has placed in my heart for a very long time. So I truly understand where you're coming from. My children were toddlers when I first began to sense the full weight of what God was placing on my life, my calling. And now my children, my boys, they're in their 20s. And there have been seasons in that journey where I looked at everything that I had poured out and I could find almost nothing tangible to show for it. I had no visible fruit. I had no momentum that I could measure, nothing that looked the way that I thought that it should look by now. And in those moments, Ecclesiastes 3:1 was either an anchor or an accusation, depending on whether I actually believed it or not at the time. So I'm going to come back to my story in a little bit. But first, I want to build something with you because understanding why God uses seasons changes everything about how you move through them. And that's what I really, truly want you to understand. So, why does God use seasons at all? Well, that is a question that I think that we don't ask enough. See, we accept that seasons exist, and scripture makes that very clear. But have you ever stopped to ask, why this way? Why doesn't God just take us from calling to fulfillment in a straight line? It would be so much easier. Why does he allow these periods of difficulty, of hiddenness, of waiting, of pruning? Why are there seasons? Well, I want to give you 3 reasons, and I want to go deep with each one, okay? So, reason number 1, seasons produce what shortcuts cannot. There are things that can only be formed in you through time and process. Things such as character, endurance, the depth of your faith, the kind of trust that doesn't require visibility to stay steady. See, these things cannot be downloaded. They cannot be fast-tracked. They cannot be produced in a microwave. They have to be slow cooked. Think about that. See, Romans 5 verses 3 and 4 says it this way, that we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. And see, that is a chain reaction if you think about it. See, suffering, the hard season, it produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character. Character produces hope. And that hope, Paul says in verse 5, does not put us to shame. But let's look at the sequence. You cannot get to character without perseverance. And you cannot get to perseverance without the suffering that produces it. And many of us, we don't want to suffer. See, God is not being cruel when he allows a hard season. He's actually being intentional. He is building in you something that will not collapse under the weight of what he is about to put in your hands. Because here's the truth. And it took me years for me to accept this. The assignment that God has given you is heavier than you currently are. It's not heavier than you will be, but it's heavier than you are right now. And the season that you are in, the one that feels like it's too much, too long, too hard, too everything, is building something that you can carry. Okay? Season 2, seasons protect the assignment. And this one is not really talked about enough. See, sometimes God keeps something hidden, it keeps you in a hidden season, not because he is withholding from you, but because he is protecting what he placed in you, because it's that important to him. See, premature visibility can destroy what God is developing. Let's think about a seed. A seed planted in the ground is not visible. It's covered, it's buried, it's dark. And someone walking past that ground would have no idea what is underneath. But if you pull that seed out of the ground too early, before the roots have formed, before the structure is established, it will not survive the exposure. And so what looked like delay was actually protection. Mark 4, verse 26 and 27 says, "This is what the kingdom of God is like." He says, "A man scatters seed on the ground night and day. Whether he sleeps or gets up, the seed sprouts and it grows, though he does not know how." See, the growth is happening even in the hidden place, even when you cannot explain it or measure it. And the ground, my sister, is not the enemy of the seed. The ground is where the seed becomes what it was always meant to be. And so I want you to think about your own journey here, okay? My own journey. There were things that God was developing in me, the way how I was thinking, the way I was seeing things, the way I was teaching, that I wasn't ready to be exposed yet. And if I had gotten the visibility I was asking for in some of those earlier seasons, I would have had a platform before I had the depth to sustain it. And I understand that now. I would have had an audience before I had something real to give them. And so that hiddenness was not punishment. It was preparation. Okay, so let's go to reason number 3. Seasons teach us to need God, not just his results. And this is perhaps the most important one. And I say that because, and it might sting a little, right? But if God gave you everything that you were believing for, the moment you asked for it, would you be seeking him? Be honest. Or would you be seeking the blessing? See, seasons strip away the noise. They remove the excitement of the newness. They remove the encouragement of the visible progress. They remove the validation of external fruit. And what is left is basically you and God. Just the relationship, just the trust, just the question of whether you actually believe he is who he says he is, even when you cannot see what he is doing. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 2 and 3. It says, "Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble and to test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." See, the wilderness, the hard season, was not God abandoning Israel. It was God revealing what was actually in their hearts and teaching them that he himself was enough. And that, my sister, is what a season does. It doesn't just build what you're working on. It builds who you are. And who you are will always outlast. I want to talk about the kind of seasons that you will encounter on this journey. And I want to say this first. Where you are in your journey determines how a season feels and what is asking of you. A woman who was newer to walking out her calling will experience these seasons differently than a woman who has been in it for years and find herself cycling through one of them again. Neither experience is wrong. They are just different, okay? And so as I walk you through these, I want you to be honest with yourself when you listen to what I'm saying. I want you to be honest with yourself about where you actually are and not where you wish you were or where you think that you should be. Because the goal is not to perform progress. The goal that I want you to have is to move through the season that you're actually in. Okay? So season 1 the season of clarity. This is a season where something shifts in your understanding. God usually pulls back the curtain even just a little bit, and then you can see more than you could before. Your direction becomes clearer. Your purpose starts to feel more defined. Questions you've been carrying, you start to find answers for those. And those seasons feel like relief, like finally being able to breathe after holding your breath for too long. But here's what I want you to understand about the clarity season. They are not the destination. They are the preparation for movement. See, clarity is given so that you can take a step, not so that you can settle into the knowing. And sometimes women of purpose, they get stuck there. See, they receive the clarity and then they wait for more clarity before they move. You can't do that. But clarity is not a permanent state. It is a gift for the next step. So what do? You take the step. All right, here's the next one, the season of alignment. This is the season where God begins to connect things. People come into your life that shouldn't make sense on paper, but somehow they just fit. Resources appear, doors start to open in the direction that you didn't even engineer that it would happen, right? And then you begin to see that what you've been carrying actually belongs somewhere. And these seasons can feel so exciting and they can be deeply stretching because alignment always requires letting go of something that no longer fits. It can be a relationship. It could be a way of doing things. It can be an identity that you've been holding on to that's too small for where God is taking you. Alignment seasons are gift and grief at the same time. Think about that. And the women who navigates them well are the ones who stay surrendered, who hold loosely to what you've built and trust God with what He's building. All right. Next one is the season of pruning. Ooh, and I want to really spend some time here. Because the pruning season is one of the most misread, most painful, misinterpreted seasons there is. Man, let's go to John 15:2. It says, He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes so that it will even be more fruitful. Listen to that carefully. Just rewind that for a minute. See, God prunes the branches that are bearing fruit, not just the dead ones, not just the ones that were never working, the ones that are producing. Those get pruned as well. See, pruning is not punishment. Pruning is not God removing His hand from your life. Pruning is God preparing you to carry more fruit than your current structure can hold. But it doesn't always feel like that when you're in it. See, when you're in a pruning season, things fall away. Relationships shift, or they can end. Opportunities that felt certain close without explanation. Things you were holding on to get removed from your hands. And if you don't know that it's a pruning season, that you're in a pruning season, you will spend all your energy grieving what God is clearing instead of trusting what He is making room for. Think about that. I myself have been in pruning seasons where I did not understand what was happening until months later, where I look back and I thought, oh, so He was removing that so this can grow. See, hindsight in a pruning season is really humbling because in the middle of it, I wasn't grateful. I was confused. I was hurt, and I was asking God why. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay for you to ask God why. You are allowed to feel the weight of what is being removed. Just don't let the feeling become the final word on what God is doing in your life. Okay? All right. So here we are, season of waiting. Yes, waiting. I know that word lands differently for everyone. And for some of you, that word may, it probably made your shoulders tense a little bit, waiting. Why? Well, because you've been waiting. You are tired and you need somebody to be honest with you about what waiting actually feels like, not just what the Instagram graphic says about it, right? Right. See, waiting can feel like abandonment. It can feel like, silence so deep that you start to wonder if God is still listening. It can feel like watching everyone around you move forward while you are still standing. And the enemy, you know what it does? He will use every single moment of that feeling to whisper nonsense. He'll say stuff like, maybe you heard God wrong. Maybe you're not who you think you are. Maybe this just isn't going to happen for you. Listen, Isaiah 40:31 says, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. The promise, my sister, is real. But I also want to honor the fact that getting to that renewed strength is going to cost you something. The hoping cost something. The staying positioned cost something. The choosing to trust when you cannot see cost you something. See, waiting is not passive. Waiting is one of the most active, spiritually demanding things that God will ever ask you to do. And here's what I want you to hold on to today. Waiting is where endurance is built. And endurance is what always allows you to sustain what God is about to release. See, you don't want to release without endurance. And I know that it's hard to hear, right? That's hard to hear it. But I mean it because it's important for you to understand that. All right, next one, the season of building. This season is where you are actively working. You are showing up consistently. You are creating, you're developing, you're executing what God has given you. You are grinding, right? You're boss babing, right? And some building seasons are visible. People can see what you're producing, fruit begins to show, momentum starts to build. And then some building seasons are hidden. The work is just as real. The effort is just as great. The faithfulness is just as costly. But what is being built is not yet fully visible. And that specific season is what we are going to go deep in part 2. Because I believe that a significant number of women watching this, listening to this right now, are in a hidden building season. And you need more than a scripture verse and an encouragement to keep going. See, you need to understand what is actually happening in your life, around you, through you, even when you cannot see it. So let's talk about the danger of misreading your season. Before we close part 1, I need to say this. I need you to really understand this because it really, really matters. The most dangerous thing about a season you cannot name is not the season itself. It is the story that you tell yourself about it. When we experience something we don't understand, we don't sit in it with uncertainty comfortably. We reach for an explanation. It has to be a reason why, right? And if we don't have a true one, a reason, we can sometimes construct a false one. And a false interpretation of your season can cause you to make decisions that take you out of position right before the breakthrough. I want you to hear me on this because you can quit the assignment in the middle of the preparation. You can pivot away from the path right before it opens. You can pull back from the very thing that God has been building in you because you interpreted the difficulty as a stop sign instead of part of the process. And I want to ask you something. I want you to sit with it honestly. What story have you been telling yourself about where you are? Is it true? Or have you been interpreting your season through the lens of fear, through the lens of unmet expectations, or the pressure of what it looks like to the people around you? Because here's the reframe that I want you to carry as we go into part 2 next week. A season you can name is a season that you can navigate. And when you know what you are in, you stop fighting it and you start moving with it. See, the woman who knows she is in a pruning season grieves differently than the woman who thinks that she's losing everything for no reason. You get that? The woman who knows that she is waiting, right? That she's in a waiting season rests differently than the woman who thinks God has forgotten her. And the woman who knows that she's in a hidden building season, listen, she keeps going differently than the woman who thinks that nothing is working. Do you see the difference? So, naming your season does not make it easy, but it does make it navigable. Listen, you are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are not misreading your calling. You may be simply in a season that you have not had language for as of yet. And now you know a little more. But as I close, I want you to tell you that in part 2, I'm going to get a little personal. I'm going to talk to you specifically about the hidden building season, what it feels like from the inside, what it is actually doing in you, and how to keep going when you cannot see what is being built. And I'm going to share my own journey in that space in a way that I have not shared publicly before, because I want you to know that this teaching is not coming from someone who has it all figured out. Um, I don't, okay? I don't have it all figured out. This teaching is coming from someone who is still in it and has basically found a way to be okay with that. So next week, look to hear that other part. But before you go, I have 2 things for you. First, if you are sitting here right now and you're wondering what season that you're actually in, I've built something specifically for that. It is called the Purpose Journey Assessment. It is a short guided tool that helps you identify where you are in your purpose journey so that you are not just guessing, and so that you can get support that actually matches where you are. And the link is going to be in the description, okay? So go take it. It is free and it will, I hope, bring you clarity. And second, if you want to be in a space where women are, having these kinds of honest conversations consistently, come on over, right? Come on over and find us inside the Lilies Among Thorns Society that is on the school platform. It is a community that is built specifically for women of purpose, women who are serious about walking out their calling and need a space where they don't have to pretend the process is easy. The link for that is in the description as well. And so before you close out, I want you to drop your answers in the comments below, okay? I want you to answer which season resonated with you mostly today and why. Because sometimes just naming it out loud is the first step towards you navigating it. All right? So if this teaching has brought you any type of clarity, I want you to share it with another woman in your circle who might need it. She might be in a season that she doesn't have a name for yet either. Okay, so subscribe so you don't miss part 2, because that conversation, we're going to go even deeper. And I will see you in the next go round. Be blessed and take care.